Let's welcome in our co-host. He is a former member of the House of Delegates for 26 years, though not consecutively. He was once Deputy Revenue Secretary, but he's always John Doyle. Good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning to you and everybody else.
Thank you for your service to our country, sir. Mr. Doyle fought in Vietnam.
And I'm just happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. He is the New York Times best-selling author, retired firefighter, and safety engineer, Mr. John Gilstrap.
Good morning.
Wonderful to have you here, sir.
Wonderful to be here.
It is I-81 is an issue this morning around mile marker 13 that is backed up, I understand, a couple of miles now, southbound. So avoid that area if possible. It was probably a bit predictable. It was an accident, 3 vehicles, as I understand it, from Alert Berkeley that took place in the 6 o'clock hour. So if you can avoid I-81 this morning, southbound in that area, around mile markers 13 to 16, as I understand it.
I'm not pretending to know the cause of whatever this accident was, but I find it remarkable that with all the technology we have, people to the moon, all the stuff that we can do, there's not yet a way to limit the spray of water from the tires of 18-wheelers in a rainstorm. That blinding, that blinding fog that completely it obliterates the view.
Oh, it totally destroys your vision.
I know. It just seems to me that there's got to be a way.
There isn't.
I apparently not.
No.
Well, a typical Gilstrap, he wants to repeal the laws of physics.
Well, we'll talk about this later, but when I'm elected king,
you will repeal them.
These things will happen. That's right.
I think that's an appointment. Yeah. Let's welcome in our first guest. You know her as a previous guest when she was wearing a sash and a crown. Katie Rose. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am great. Are you done raining, by the way?
I am done raining, but it's not done raining
It's
outside.
Yeah. How was your rain? It was Miss Virginia?
It was Miss Virginia.
Right?
So it was incredible. Virginia took really good care of me when I was in law school. And what a lot of people don't know about Miss America is you can compete where you live full-time, work full-time, or go to school full-time. Mm-hmm. And I was full-time in law school. So I competed for the title of Miss Virginia. But I would also like to tell you that you've had me on the show since graduating law school and every big milestone in my life. One competing for the title of Miss Virginia, you had me in here as Miss Loudoun County. Mm-hmm. And then when I went to Miss America, which was probably something every little girl dreams about at least one point in their lifetime, you had me on when I was Miss Virginia preparing for Miss America. And now you have me on in a different capacity. So thank you for always just giving me a microphone. I really appreciate it.
Sure. We've got a lot of milestones to go yet in your life. So you got a lot more
I hope so.
Where did you go to law school?
University of Richmond School of Law. So go Spiders.
Yeah, that's right. Steve Catley was a Spider. Yeah, Steve County Commissioner.
The red
Steve
and blue.
Catley. So you have pre-filed your candidacy papers.
I have.
You're going to run for the House of Delegates.
I am.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah. Well, what would you like to know?
Well, where are you running?
I am running in the 96th District for House of Delegates. That's currently Delegate Lisa White's seat. And, I was just at a point in my life, I was working as counsel for Congressman Riley Moore, and I was just paying for direction because before working for Riley Moore, I was policy advisor for Governor Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia. And I remember through that whole process, election happened, and Riley Moore sought me out and said, I remember a few years ago when you asked if I ever made it to Congress, if you want to work for me, and the answer was yes. And my roads at that point I knew led back to the country roads, and I had this public servant's heart that now got to directly impact and serve my community, and I fell in love with that, and I loved that process. And I remember praying to God during the appropriation season saying, what is my ultimate direction? It's one thing to do really cool things and serve and work for really cool people, but how do I fit in this puzzle piece? And oddly enough, the very next morning, I came back to West Virginia for the next day to attend the Charlie Kirk Vigil that happened at the War Memorial Park. And Lisa White and I had a conversation, and now I'm going to be running for House of Delegates, and I'm very excited about that.
So that opens up a door to some questions.
It sure
You
does.
and Lisa White had a conversation,
Yes.
and then suddenly you're filing in Lisa White's district. So either the conversation went terribly and you're like, I'm getting this woman out of office, or it was some information that made you think that seat might be available.
Well, it was some information about her future and her direction, and I'll leave most of those questions up to her, but what I ultimately ascertained from that conversation was she may not be deciding to file in January. She has pre-filed because at the time that was something that she decided to do, and now ultimately I've ascertained that more likely than not she will not be filing filing in January. And so for me, I said a prayer. Riley Moore always told me, he said, sometimes opportunities become available before you think they do when there's a vacancy. So you just say a prayer, make a decision, and never look back. So that's exactly what I have been doing. And come January, with what the information I've ascertained, I don't want January to come, Lisa White not file, and then I missed an opportunity to be engaging with, hopefully my future constituents and just be out in my community. And ultimately, as much as I love Washington, D.C., it's just been a privilege to be back home. And you kind of touched on this earlier, but I love the fact that I can type in my GPS 5 miles, and that actually means 5 minutes in traffic versus 5 hours in traffic.
Yeah,
sometimes.
D.C. traffic is awful.
Yeah, so I just think it's the right time. And I just know in my heart that God has me on this path, and something good will come of it. I hope that it's a seat in the House of Delegates. And if it's not, I've already had the privilege of meeting so many wonderful people and being re-rooted in the community that made me and raised me to be who I am.
So if Lisa White decides ultimately to run, what happens to your candidacy?
I will still stay in the race. I have an abundance of respect for her for wanting to seek out somebody who's younger, who's hungry, and that's exactly what she said. She said, in the event that I do not run, I want to find a young, hungry Gen Z person who wants to make a difference. And I'm 28, so I'm on the geriatric side of Gen Z, but still Gen Z nonetheless. And I think I will stay. I know I will stay in the race, because this has now been deeply rooted in my heart and something that I'm passionate about doing. And I believe that I'll stay in.
Mr. Doyle.
Would you describe the geography of the 96th district, where the boundaries are, what communities are in it? Because we have enough of them around here now that when you just say a number, not everybody knows exactly where you mean.
Yeah. So I live right behind the airport. So if you go down Kelly Island Road, so my district would be right down through there, up past the airport and up through Pikeside towards Inwood. And so that would be the district that I would be running for. There's been a lot of redistricting, of course, as you know, sir, since
Well, and it has to be done every 10 years. And for many years, we all thought it was only going to be done every 10 years. And now it looks like it's done every 6 months. But at any rate, so it sounds like it is east of 81 or east of 11 and south of Route 9.
Correct.
Is that right? Pretty much
Yes.
it. On the southeast, it is the Jefferson County line. Is that correct?
it is the Berkeley County. I'm in Berkeley County.
Yes.
Yes.
Of the Jefferson County line with
Yes.
Berkeley County.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now everybody, I think, has a picture of where you're running.
Yes. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Gilstrap.
So why? What are your priorities? What do you want to see done? What isn't being done that should be? Or what is being done that needs to continue?
Well, I guess I'll just handle those in order. I think,
Okay.
first of all, I've always had in my heart, my father is Larry Faircloth Sr., and I knew in my heart when I decided to pursue a career in public service that I always wanted to be in the House of Delegates at one point. I thought that initially this would be something that was 10 years down the road. Again, like we talked about earlier, this is something that's come to fruition much sooner than that. And I just think that I really want to make a difference in my community. I've had an opportunity to learn a lot from Congressman Riley Moore and folks that I've worked for before that. And I think one of the hugest things is taking advantage of the place where we live, which is in the Eastern Panhandle. I mean, we have a wonderful problem to have, which is a bunch of people are moving here. And I just want to see that this continue to move in the right direction. And I think that, the biggest piece for me that was the deciding factor wasn't the fact that, Lisa White and I had this conversation. It wasn't necessarily the fact that I graciously got Riley Moore's blessing to do this, but I think September 10th had a lot to do with activating my generation, and that was the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And that's activated the Generation Z, or Gen Z, if you will, to be more engaged and to fearlessly and unapologetically do so. And so I do think that, even before his assassination, I spent a lot of time being educated on what it means to capitalize on who I am in my community, which is a young Catholic conservative woman, and those would be the values that I would like to still fight to have continuing to progress in Charleston.
Do you think Charlie Kirk's influence will continue for years? I mean, in the immediate, immediate aftermath of his assassination, there's that outpouring of grief and support and anger and all those emotions. A year from now, 2 years from now, do you still think that the young folks, the Gen Z folks, will be empowered, still feel empowered to speak conservative words aloud?
Well, I most certainly hope so. And I think that that's up to people like me and in my position. And when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I do not believe that his microphone hit the ground. I believe it fell in the hands of people like me who are obligated and compelled to not let his death be in vain. He had an incredible message that was led by his faith and his commitment to the Lord and serving his country. And that's exactly what I want to do. And I think that stems back into your question as to why. I've spoken to folks already who have asked, why do I want to do this and be this? I am 28 years old. I am really, truly, I'm already, I've gotten my law degree, but I am an aspiring wife and I'm an aspiring mother, and I don't take those positions lightly. And so I want to continue to fight to have the life in the Eastern Panhandle and in West Virginia that I would love to have one day.
Katie Rose, our guest here on the program, and as you heard earlier, she has pre-filed her pre-candidacy papers for the 96th House of Delegates district. That is a seat currently held by Lisa White, who was newly elected to that seat when John Hardy left to become Berkeley County Commissioner, by the way. So let's talk more about some policy things. You've worked on policy in Virginia, and you worked under Riley Moore, as you mentioned, in his congressional seat. I remember interviewing Riley when he was brand new running for House of Delegates a dozen years ago or so, and Riley had a race with John Doyle. I think you won that race, did you not, John?
I did.
Yeah. So let's talk about some things in West Virginia
that
are of concern, especially in the Eastern Panhandle, one of which is locality pay. Mm-hmm. To this point, nobody has successfully been able to implement locality pay in the Eastern Panhandle. We have an Eastern Panhandle governor right now. We have an all-Republican legislature for the Senate and the House of Delegates out of the Eastern Panhandle. Can it be done, and is now the optimum time to get that done?
I think it can be done, and I think it should be done, most importantly. I think it's very, very important that, especially as somebody from the Panhandle, that we are competing with Maryland and Virginia. And if we can't afford to, pay our teachers the same and to be able to keep people in our state, they're going to leave. And, I see this in other areas, too. I've experienced this outside of some of these issues, too, with regard to, for instance, conversations I have at home with my mom. I remember years ago when I was living in the Panhandle and going to undergrad, one of the biggest issues we faced on that point was we couldn't keep correctional officers, and we had to deploy the National Guard into the Eastern Regional Jail. Right. And the main reason, hearing from COs as to why that was happening, was because they could go 20 miles south or 20 miles north, risk their life in the same way, but get double the salary for doing so. I think that most certainly we need to stay relevant and competitive with Virginia and Maryland, and that starts with locality pay. And so I think it can be done, and I think it should be done, and that's most certainly something I would vote for in Charleston should I be elected to the House of Delegates.
Any idea how you convince people from other parts of the state that it doesn't mean their teachers will be making less money, or their state employees will be making less money, or their state troopers will be making less money?
I think that's really I think that's the ultimate hurdle that we're having to overcome. But, I think there's been this whole conversation in Charleston about, the Eastern Panhandle versus the rest of the state, and it almost being, combating fields. And I would like to see this as, being pro-West Virginia. And part of that starts with economic development, which we are seeing an abundance of in the Eastern Panhandle. And so I think that being pro-West Virginia and making sure that we have people who are educating our colleagues, presumably their children, our colleagues' children, I think it's very, very important to make sure that we are keeping competent and qualified teachers in the Panhandle, and that's one of the ways in which we do that.
Mr. Doyle.
Yeah, during my 26 years in the legislature, I made this argument a lot of the time. In fact, it was Senator John Unger and I, about 30 years ago, that came up with the idea that we needed locality pay. Prior to then, there wasn't really that big a difference between the pay here and the pay in Loudoun and Frederick County, Virginia, Frederick County, Maryland, Washington County, Maryland. But that's when the difference began to be greater and greater and greater. And we said, listen, it is not fair not only to the employees, but it's not fair to the taxpayers who live in this area that they have so many teaching slots and correctional officer slots and human service caseworkers that go unfilled or are filled by people that really aren't qualified for them or first-rate qualified. They got to be secondary or tertiary qualified. So anyway, that's when we started, and the problem came back with, you all have enough economic development up there. Shut up. We need it down here. And they do. They do need it in other places. I do think now After this last redistricting, when we went to more than 10% of each house of the legislature, the time is ripe. If the Eastern Panhandle delegation gets together and says, listen, whatever our differences on other issues, we're going to hang together on this, and we're going to say to the rest of the state, other parts of the state, you want our help on what you want? This is what we get in return. It needs to be some hardball bargaining. Now, up until now, we haven't had a critical mass of representation to do that when we had less than 10%. Now, this is a personal opinion. I think once we got over 10%, we've got that critical mass. So I just wanted to throw that out for your consideration in case you win.
Thank you.
Mr. Gilstrap.
Yeah, let me be deliberately provocative here, do a little devil's advocating. If we decide that locality pay, increasing public servants' pay is the priority, for the last quite some time, the priority of the legislature has been to cut taxes. Cut. So one would argue, if our priority is to increase pay, we should increase taxes. We should increase the flow of revenue from the public into the public coffers, so therefore we can pay our public servants more. What's wrong with that logic?
Well, I think what's wrong with that logic is increasing taxes. I don't want to see that happen in the state of West Virginia whatsoever. In fact, I'd like to see it go in the opposite direction. But I do think that part of the conversations that I would love to have in Charleston is advocating for the abundance of economic development that I do see as a blessing, but the thorns that come along with the roses, we need to be able to be prepared to adequately keep those competent people that Mr. Doyle was mentioning, instead of having them flee to Loudoun County or to Frederick County and to keep them here. And so I would love to figure out a solution that most certainly does not involve increasing our taxes.
Can those two things be true at the same time?
I think they can be true, and I think it goes back to the word that you mentioned earlier, which is prioritization. I am new at this. I'm not going to pretend to know everything, and most certainly I will not pretend to know things that I do not know.
Right.
But that's one of the things that I want to be educated on, but I can firmly say that raising our taxes is not one way in which I'm wanting to.
John's going to explode here.
And by the way, before you go, John, real quick, I want to correct a mistake I made earlier, and Jason Barrett texted me to make sure I knew to get it correct. It was
I know what it was.
Eric Householder's seat, not John.
Yes, it was Eric Householder's seat.
As I said it, I knew it sounded wrong.
Rob, I knew that, but I was being polite.
No, please
I
correct.
was too, but I will say too, that's
Corrections are fine.
No, I'm not going to explode, but I am going to go back to my 19 years as a member of the House Finance Committee and my 3 years as Deputy Secretary of Revenue. Okay, fine. You want to raise somebody's pay, not necessarily everybody's pay, but the pay of some people. And you don't want to raise taxes, you want to lower taxes. Where does the money come from? It got to come from somewhere.
It absolutely does.
Where?
I am not entirely sure what the answer to that question is, but I am open-minded to engaging in those conversations because I most certainly see a need for our teachers to be paid more. That's just something that has to happen. I have a friend of mine who was actually Miss West Virginia the year that I was Miss Virginia, and her name is Carrington Childress, and I know that she is an aspiring teacher, and she's studying at Shepherd University, and I know that one of the things that she has struggled with was saying just that. She said, I don't understand why I can get the same degree and you know, I want to stay here. I want to stay here so badly, but I also want to be a wife and a mom and have a family and be able to care for them and educate my children and feel confident in being able to do that. And she's struggled with that same task. Now, she is a mountain mama, true and true, so she will likely stay in the state of West Virginia, but that's not the case for most
Let me throw something out, too, that I think bears heavily on this. Most other states, a much higher percentage of public education funding comes from local governments. We have a structure in West Virginia which is highly top-down. Taxes are very, very low at the local level. Our residential real estate property taxes are the lowest in the country. And around the country, and in most states, this is what funds schools and other local government initiatives. And the same is true for things like health and human services. A lot of states, much of that comes from local governments. And that's why we have to go through the procedure of persuading people from Bluefield and Wheeling and Parkersburg that we need to do something here, and they'll go, well, do it for yourselves. You know, that sort of, under our structure, you can't do that.
Katie, how do we get more people to work?
How do we get more people to work? Well, I think it's just by, at least for my younger generation, and that's all I can speak for, is incentivizing people the fulfillment that comes from your work. I remember the first time I ever received a paycheck and I got to save it to save up for my study abroad trip that I was going to do for Morocco. I was so thrilled and I appreciated it more. And I think that being a conservative, that's what it means, is you work for what you have and you earn everything you have and you appreciate it, and it lasts so much longer. I remember growing up, my mom was very kind and very generous and wanted my brother Christian and me to have every single opportunity. But I will tell you, when it was my money that I saved up to buy the new Michael Kors bag I wanted, that was the prized treasure. That was the one thing that I wanted to keep and I wanted to have, and it was my thing that I invested in, and that was just me as like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old girl. What that transcends to over time is just incentivizing people to see the fruit of their own labor, whether that's community service, whether that's being involved, whether that's seeing the paycheck or the money come in. And there's also this sense of pride that comes along with it, and this fulfillment and this purpose. And that's what happened to me before I ever received a paycheck. I was a serial interner on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I first interned for Congressman David McKinley, then I interned for Senator Capito, then I interned for the House Committee on Ways and Means when the Republicans were in the majority, and then I interned twice at the White House, all of which I did for free. But I think this public service element added to seeing directly, there was one time, and I maybe one sentence made it to the final product, but my binder that I worked on hit the president's desk and he reviewed it. And just the fulfillment of knowing that whether it's public service and you see that piece of pride in seeing something to the finish line and investing in your community, or whether it is you have the privilege to do something else and see this fulfillment and purpose of providing for your family or for yourself. And I felt the sense of security when I started doing those things for myself. So I think it's incentivizing people to understand we live in a country where we have the privilege to understand that we're built on this concept of, what we can do to serve our country and what we can do to serve our people. And I think paying taxes and working are two of those things.
We have a minute left. Final quick question for Katie Rose.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a quick answer to it. How do we get kids to go to school?
I think it's by having parents that incentivize them and take them to school. I think that we need to have people who are leading our kids to the future and to the finish line. And that's something that Erica Kirk said recently is, some people, don't take a whole lot of pride in being, quote, just a stay-at-home mom or whatever, but they're educating their children. And I think having parents who take pride in our future generation and pouring into our children is what's most important. And that's what I want to do as a legislator, is invest in our future generation and let them know that they are capable of things and getting them in the door so that they can receive their education and live a fulfilling, meaningful, and purposeful life.
Katie, 30 seconds left. How do people find out more about you and your campaign?
Well, I pre-filed to run for House of Delegates just 2 weeks ago, the day after my last day in Washington, D.C. Right now I'm on any social media platform that you can imagine, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of which are my name. And if you have any trouble with it, I am in my home state. The country roads did take me home to West Virginia, but if you type in Katie Rose, Miss Virginia, you'll find me too.
Very good. Hey, congratulations to you on this decision.
Thank you.
She'll be running in the 96 in the primary. That's the seat Lisa White holds, but we don't know if Lisa White's going to continue along in that seat or not. So stay tuned. We'll find out more.